Hello lovely people, hello lovely people, hello lovely people, hello lovely people, hello lovely people. Tilly's matching. In today's video we're going to be talking about masks. Wear your mask for goodness sake. But not just how they've strangely become a political symbol. What? We're going to be looking at the specific difficulty masks create for deaf people and how we can work around it. This month is Disability Pride Month, and I only found that out 1 week in with the aid of Twitter, despite being actually disabled myself. Darn, the hive mind didn't work this time. I thought, gosh, I've just done a month of videos about LGBTQ+ issues for Rainbow Pride Month, as I will now be calling it for differentiation. Why don't I do a month of videos about disabilities? So I'm jumping right in with a video about deafness. How not controversial. You may have noted that in bios and interviews I describe myself as a deaf and disabled creator, rather than just lumping deafness in with me being genetically disabled, even though it is a symptom of such. Now this is because many deaf people see the insinuation that they are disabled as insulting. Look at it this way. Someone who uses a wheelchair due to paraplegia still needs to do so inside their own house. When spending time with friends, even if those friends are also in wheelchairs, they will need certain accommodations like ramps and accessible toilets. However, a deaf person moving around their own house or just doing their own thing doesn't feel like they have a problem until they come into contact with a person who expects them to hear, or a part of the world that is built that you need to hear for. If they're a sign language user chatting with other people who sign, they won't feel like it's a lesser form of communication, it's just a different language. There's an argument in many deaf circles that not only are they not disabled by design, but disabled by the world around them. It's a controversial point though, and obviously not all deaf people feel the same. Nuance. Of the many symptoms I have and the things that are wrong with me, I probably care the least about my deafness, even though it's the one that others think would bother me the most. Well, you know, I didn't care about it until there was a pandemic. For the first 2 months of lockdown, I didn't leave my house other than to walk the dogs in the park and drop bags of washing off at my sister-in-law's front door because, yes, we still live in a building site that doesn't have a working washing machine and can't use the bath to wash our clothes because we're using that as the sink. So other than buying new knickers every day, we have limited options. The only person I spoke to face to face was my wife, who also went nowhere because the government told dentists to stop working, but then didn't put anything in place to help people in severe dental pain, so sorry to those people. We didn't wear masks whilst walking around the park because it's a big park and everybody obeyed social distancing rules, and I mean, it sounds easy, right? And then I got taken to hospital. Now that isn't super odd for me, as I previously mentioned, I have a malfunctioning body. But what was new was dealing with medical staff who were constantly wearing masks. In normal circumstances, doctors wear masks for a limited number of things. When doing surgery in order to avoid contaminating the open wound or picking something up. Equally, dentists wear masks for their protection and for your own. However, in these strange times, all personnel, including porters and admin staff, were wearing their masks, and I was suddenly confronted with the fact that I couldn't lip read like I normally do. Wow, did I not understand what anyone was saying. In fact, that problem slapped me around the face like a cold fish the moment we arrived at the emergency room doors, because only the person in need of medical attention is actually allowed to go in now, not a friend, family member or carer. But of course them telling me that didn't really mean much since I couldn't hear them and they couldn't take their masks off. So my wife had to explain that she would be acting as both my interpreter and carer, and there was just no other option. So she was coming in, which was perfectly fine during the daytime. She just kind of followed me around the hospital and used a mixture of sign language and pulling her own mask down to explain what was going on. I mean, she can breathe in my direction after all, we've shared all of our bugs. Sounds romantic. But it kind of got scary when she went home to sleep because, most doctors and nurses were really happy to pull their masks down, let me lip read while they stood at the end of the bed at a safe distance. But I was woken up in the middle of the night by a figure in a mask and visor looming over me with a swab to do a COVID test, who did not explain what they were doing in a way that I could understand, but did stick a massive cotton swab up my nose and in my mouth, so it's a thing. At least I know for sure that I'm negative for COVID. The hospital experience was kind of pretty shaky for me for many reasons, obviously, but also because I felt so insecure because of my inability to communicate. Imagine you're in a foreign hospital, in a place where you don't speak the language, but they understand you. Now imagine they're doing tests and trying to explain to you what might be the cause of your problems. Oh, and you're in massive amounts of pain, so you can't really pay attention either. So stressful! Moving forward, as the world starts to open up once again, some countries are mandating that masks are worn in public spaces or on public transport. Sadly, my country decided they can't be asked to make a law about wearing masks, but maybe your country is more sensible. Then again, 40% of my audience is American, so probably not. Sorry guys. Deaf people, people who are hard of hearing, and those with other auditory or processing problems that mean they have to rely on lip reading, are still going to be using those public spaces. Thus, I am here to bring you some top tips on how to communicate whilst wearing a mask, and what you really shouldn't be doing. Okay, obviously. So let's go over the normal lip reading helper toolkit. Don't turn your back. Don't eat whilst speaking. Don't mumble. Don't go too slow or too fast. And obviously, don't cover your mouth. Unless you are doing so for religious or cultural reasons, because I'm not here to tell you how to make one marginalised group's life easier by discriminating against another. I mean, you could all learn sign language though. I know, I just told you about being in hospital and the doctors taking their masks off for me and that being really great, but don't do that in everyday life. We were in a controlled, sterile environment and we'd all been tested for COVID-19. We were all negative. Other options include using the Notes app on your phone or writing out a text message and holding it up to each other. This is a little trick that deaf people use often and a way that I sometimes make my friends interpret at panel talks or speeches that aren't interpreted. You just need a really fast typer for that one though. Thank you, Clara. Obviously, don't be a wally and hand your phone to someone when neither of you are wearing gloves. I mean, that's just asking for trouble. If you're low tech, or in school, use a pen and paper to write messages down instead. Try not to write long, complex works of literary art when you're just asking to borrow a ruler, because that's just really, really boring for the other person to sit through. And the obvious, learn sign language. Whether you work in a shop, a cafe, a town hall, or a hospital, if you have a job that requires you to interact with members of the public, be prepared for some of those people to be deaf. Learn the 40 or 50 words that are the most important to your profession, including the obvious ones like toilet and help. Facial expressions do play a large role in sign language, but even when they aren't visible, the signs themselves are still helpful. Don't assume that all deaf or hard of hearing people can sign, however, so do be prepared to communicate in written form as well. If you don't know any sign language, common sense gestures are still useful. If someone asks you where in the shop a pan is and you can't walk from there right now, a simple straight, left, straight, and left again still works. I have no idea if that was your left, but hopefully. As is third door on the right. Take your time with communicating and allow the other person to ask you repeated questions without getting flustered or rushing. Especially bear this in mind when dealing with older people who struggle with their hearing. It's harder for them to adapt to their hearing loss in the first place, so it's going to be even harder for them now that they're wearing masks. Repeat yourself if need be, write clearly in a font that isn't too small, and just try everything. Right, now let's talk about the thing that I am most often tagged in posts about on Twitter. Clear masks. Firstly, sorry, they're not actually a COVID-related invention. They've been around for a while, and this is not the first time deaf people have needed medical care or entered the medical profession, so they're a thing. They even had a cameo in my favourite show, Grey's Anatomy. They have a new diagnostician and recurring character, Dr. Lauren Riley, who is deaf and played by a deaf actress, Shoshana Stern. I mean, it's very exciting. She and the team wear clear masks. It was filmed pre-COVID, and yes, these masks have been available for a while. Their composition is different, some work better than others. These particular ones are adorable and made by costume designer Michelle May. I will leave her Instagram in the description. But they all have the same uses and the same flaws. If someone's speaking English, 35% of language is visible on the lips. Just 35%. The rest is based on context, body language, how well you know a person, and thus what they are likely to want to talk to you about right now. But that 35% estimation is only based on a fully visible face, not a tiny window. If I understand your first word, that doesn't necessarily mean I understand your second. And if I don't understand your first word, well then in my mind that second word could be literally anything in the English language. It takes a lot of brain power to constantly guess what the next word could be, and I cycle through them in my mind like slots on a gambling machine. Someone wearing a mask with a window is helpful, but not if they change their speech pattern because the mask feels funny, or the window fogs up, obviously. By the way, in order to cut down your mask window fogging up, you just rub a little dish soap on the inside of the clear window and then just allow it to dry. When you're deaf, your brain runs on a delay, which for me means I tend to just jump in and cut people off when I've worked out what the previous sentence was about. And if I think I get where your sentence is already going, I'll probably stop you and ask, "You mean X?" rather than sit through a minute of something I might not understand, and by then you'll have moved on to talking about something else. Anyway, if you're holding a banana and start a sentence with, "My favourite fruit has changed," I'm going to jump in with, "I love bananas too!" It might not be right, but it makes me feel involved. I do it a lot when I'm tired because I just don't have the energy to expend on trying to work out what you're saying. It's much easier instead to ask questions or give statements that you can then agree or disagree to. The hardest part is working out what's going on when someone switches to a new topic. I already have all of my replies for the last topic ready, so you're going to get them, even though you thought we'd moved on. I'll be trying to lip read you, but with the earlier topic as context, which means I'm really going to mess up. The best way to help is to make it very clear when you're changing a topic or asking me an unrelated question. Oh yeah, actually my favourite type of frog is the blue poison dart frog. Can I get you another drink? Now, in my mind, that probably becomes, actually my favourite frog is the blue horizon part frog, and I think it has a stink. Next time, try, actually, my favourite frog is the blue poison dart frog. Do you want a drink? One of the things my wife says painfully often is, "I'm not talking about that anymore." Or more often, "We're not talking about that anymore." And always with the same facial expression. I'm sorry. Unless you tell me when you're talking about something new, I'm not going to know. So tell me, or else I will just talk a lot about a subject that I have knowledge on in order to narrow down the list of possible words you could say. Back to masks. A lip window mask obviously has advantages over an occlusive mask, because with a full mask, I don't even necessarily know that you're talking, so. I mean, seriously, try watching a surgery scene on Grey's Anatomy with the mute button on. Can you actually tell who is talking and when? Is that just a silent reaction shot? Or is she giving me a motivational speech that in some way relates the patient's case to the love lives of those around her, or the last massive traumatic disaster that seems to happen annually? Ah, relatable. Whilst a mask with a plastic window, provided the window is large enough, is certainly helpful, and I make my wife wear this one when we're in public, even though she looks slightly hilarious, there are drawbacks. It's sweaty to wear, it reduces the surface area that serves as filtration, and there's the worry that it sort of diverts airflow through unfiltered pathways around the edges of the mask. Also, what if it's so reflective that it just sort of shines? Oh, and speaking of my wife wearing this mask, it's helpful when she does for me, but I don't know how helpful I would find a stranger wearing one. I have a large back catalogue of my wife's facial expressions and speech patterns just stored in my head. It's what helps me sub in a word when she stutters over it or switches it for something similar. When I lip read mushroom, I know she's accidentally saying mushrooms, but she really means tomatoes. Marry your best friend, kids. You're probably the only people who'll understand each other. But when I meet a new person for the first time, I need to learn their face and the way they speak, the odd lilts to their language, and how their accent changes the words that they say, and how that, for me, changes their meaning. That is near impossible when they're wearing a mask, and not much easier when all I have to go on is this, tiny clear slit. I need to see your whole cheeks to understand you, the way your mouth pulls to the sides. I need to see your chin, if it goes backwards or forwards at the end of a word. I need to be clearly able to see your eyes and mouth together to know if you're joking or you're being serious. So what's the answer? Well, wearing a mask during a pandemic is the answer. Being able to sign, "Can I help you?" or quickly write it down, knowing the words for hospital, doctor, and ambulance. It would be great if someone could invent a fully clear mask that didn't suffocate the wearer, but still keep them safe, but we might be a little way off that. I've seen some doctors and dentists wearing this hood-type mask that blows air in through the back and looks a bit like a beekeeper's hood, mixed with a space helmet, and gives you a full clear panel to see the wearer's entire face. But it's very expensive, and I think you have to carry an oxygen tank around, so that might be a month much. Lip reading has the magical ability of annoyingly making other people forget that you're deaf, and it's often very unhelpful. So please just be prepared to help your fellow hearing-is hard humans out. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like to know more about me, deafness, or just enjoy learning about different perspectives in an amusing way, then subscribe to my channel, and I shall see you in my next video. Mwah.